Hi, everybody. Julianna Forlano here. Welcome to act.tv's Act Now. Today I'm going into labor. Not really, but I am going into labor. The resurgence of labor, it is all over the place. It is barely reported on. And when it is, everything's often twisted around. So I'm going to bring you some voices from the actions. We're going to be covering the Amazon organizing drive in Staten Island. We're going to be covering what the airline are trying to do and how it's being reported to their workers. I got a lot of surprises about how these airline workers are not paid for things we think and maybe rightfully assume that they are being paid for. We're going to be covering that. We're also going to be covering what's going on at Starbucks. Marianne Williamson, former presidential candidate, is coming on the program to talk about the resurgence in unionizing across the board. She was also at the Starbucks workers event that happened not too long ago, and she was able to speak with some of the workers there. Also, Bob Henley was able to speak with Sarah Nelson. We have his segment coming up, and there's more. 20,000 teachers are on strike in Puerto Rico. Did you know? We have so much to talk about, and of course, I'm going to be taking and reading your comments on the air, so don't forget to make them in our YouTube page at actTV and on our Facebook page at actTV. I promise I will get some of those Facebook comments in. I know it's mostly been YouTube, folks. So all that is coming up and more. So stay tuned. All right. Coming up on Sunday in Staten Island, where most of my paisani are cooking sauce and voting for Republicans, Amazon workers rallied to make the final case for joining the Amazon labor union. That is what is in today's Action Rundown. Amazon workers at a second warehouse on Staten Island have been voting all week. And if the majority votes to join, the facility will be the second Amazon facility to unionize not only on Staten Island, but in the nation. There was a pre-vote rally there this past Sunday, and it was pretty powerful. AOC spoke. It was called a Solidarity Sunday. Sarah Nelson was there, head of the Flight Attendants Union. Marianne Williamson, the public advocate of New York City, a former Occupy Wall Streeter, and now a candidate for New York governor. He was there. The amazing Senate candidate we've had here on the program before, Brittany Ramos de Barros. There was the Amazon labor union organizer, Chris Smalls, and even Bernie Sanders, who volunteered, by the way, to be the labor secretary for Biden, but was politely shown the door. All these folks spoke to the crowd. My buddy, Dave Lippman, who I have known since I was on WBAI Pacifica Network in New York City, shot this video. And I mean, he was on the scene. It's raw. It's exactly what you would experience if you were there. And he really captured the electric atmosphere at the pre-vote rally. Take a look.
When big unions scoffed at Starbucks and were scared of Amazon, local workers who were suffering said, "Comrades, oh come on." So they organized themselves and the workers all jumped on. We're the union and we're strong. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what community looks like. This is what community looks like.
And so here on this Sunday, I am here to worship with you at the House of Labor that Chris Smalls and ALU are building right here in Staten Island.
Not only was demonized herself, but she beat Amazon herself.
The first city to win a tax on Amazon in the nation. Lesson number 1, lead relentlessly with concrete and clear demands to win over your fellow workers. Carry out unstoppable shop floor organizing with workers talking to workers.
If you can go to space, you can give our workers a bathroom break. Ain't that right? If you can go to space, you can make sure that you're treating people well and giving them solid health care benefits. That they don't have a 3-hour commute to and from work. That they can afford the house that they can live in. That people don't have to be sleeping in their cars in order to work for Amazon. All of this is an indignity and an injustice, and it has no place in New York City. And we're going to change that, and right here, our workers out here are going to change that.
We could use that for transportation so that workers can get here without sleeping in their cars in this parking garage right here. That's $400 million of our tax dollars that Jeff Bezos owes us back, and together here we are demanding that they give us our goddamn money back.
Who shut shit down?
We shut shit down.
Who shut shit down?
We shut shit down.
Who shut shit down?
We shut shit down.
Who run this town?
We run this town.
Who run this town?
We run this town.
This is our one chance to improve our livelihoods, to be a part of something truly great, to be part of a movement. This is just the beginning. So, to my family at LGJ5, this is a call for all of you to join our brothers and sisters and siblings at JFK8 and join local number 1.
I've been out here every day, like organizing, taking VTO, phone banking, and everything like that. I'm like, we're fighting. I'm fighting for all my family and my friends who've been fired. Like, I'm fighting for all of us. Like, this place needs a union. Like, all I have to say is solidarity forever.
You need $107 billion so people can't feed their own families? And they like to talk about, oh, he worked hard. Come here so you can see some hard workers. Let me show you some hard work. People getting hurt when they come to work. Let me show you some single mothers working hard, 2 or 3 jobs.
I keep talking about it because this is the beginning of the resurgence of the labor movement. Starbucks is next. Home Depot is next. Target is next. Walmart is next. It's only just beginning. Watching what is happening here has ignited women at New York City Transit. And yesterday we had a women's brunch, and women are getting ready to fight the MTA to ensure that we get our just rights and protect our reproductive rights. You know what this also means? That means that these workers are going to become the next city council members.
And we, in our union, are asking them to go back and teach us everything that they did for us to organize and be successful.
I am so damn inspired by what Chris and Derek and this amazing organizing committee and everybody who's got the guts to organize the Amazon Labor Union is doing. The public sector workers of New York City own, believe it or not, $1.9 billion of stock in Amazon. That makes you powerful shareholders at this company, and we are going to demand accountability as shareholders.
Yeah!
What we're seeing now, when you guys are helping to lead that effort, millions of people standing up saying, enough is enough. All right, we're going to create an economy that works for working people, not just billionaires. Congratulations to all that you've done. Let's go forward together. Thank you.
We are just getting started with Starbucks workers, with Amazon workers, with retail workers, with farm workers. Black and brown people will rise, and we will be respected on the job. Union, yes! Union, yes! Union, yes! Union, yes! Union, yes!
And that was thanks to our friend Dave Lippman, who brought us that wonderful footage from, right there on the floor. So thank you so much, Dave, for that. Did you feel the burn? I felt the burn from all of those speakers. I mean, those are the future leaders of America right there, and some of the current leaders of America. Brad Lander was on there. He was the guy who looked very red. He used to be my city councilman when I lived in Park Slope in Brooklyn. Yes, he's still just as red. He's got to get some sunblock. Anyway, how wonderful was that? And so feeling the burn, very electrifying there from Staten Island. In related news about the burn, Senator Sanders, the independent of Vermont, said he hasn't ruled out another run for actual president. The Hill recently reported that 58% of people polled said they might actually support a moderate candidate. This is a story that was in the Hill. If the choice is between Biden and Trump, 58% said they would support a moderate candidate. Unfortunately, the report said a moderate candidate. Clearly, they don't realize they already have a moderate candidate in Joe Biden. What we need is a candidate that meets the moment without either authoritarian demagoguery or ineffective incrementalism. Do we have one of those? Let's remember that many people who voted for Trump would have voted for Sanders if the establishment, the Democratic establishment, had run a fair fight. And then we might not be in this exact mess that we are in now. The Burn also said he was not going to run if Joe Biden was running. Tell me in the comments what you think. Should Bernie run against Biden as a Democrat? Should he run as an independent? Crystal Ball on her show said she thinks he's too old and maybe not really able to do so anymore. So should other people run in the Democratic Party and primary Joe Biden, or should they run as independents? We've got other people. We've got Marianne Williamson. She ran last time. She's coming on the show later. She could run as an independent. Or the UBI guy, that guy, he could run. Jon Stewart, the comedian, former host of The Daily Show, said he might run. I mean, for crying out loud, people are even trying to conscript Oprah Winfrey to run. It's going to be exciting. Put your comments, and I can't wait to, I see them coming in, and I can't wait to read them. Anyway, back to what happened at Amazon. Workers began voting this week in the National Labor Relations Board election to either join or not the independent Amazon labor union that won over the warehouse across the street on April 1st. Ballots from the second warehouse, known by its number JFK 8, are due back tomorrow, Friday, April 19th, and counting is scheduled to begin on May 2nd, barring some unfortunate incident where, as you saw that I just put up, the ballots are accidentally burned to a crisp by an Amazon brand ballot box malfunction. I mean, they are vicious. And put that one back up, John Carlo. That was a funny image that was made for us. There you go. Amazon has been viciously anti-union, and I wouldn't put it past them to make the vote be in some box that they made that blows up when you try to fill it with votes to join a union. Anyway, and most people know about the vicious anti-unionism that goes on when big corporations, including and especially Amazon, are trying to fight against unionization. In 2021, when the fine folks working in the searing summer heat at the warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, which had no air conditioning, no water fountains, when they tried to form a union, Amazon spent almost $4.3 million on water fountains and air conditioning. Oh, no, wait. No, they spent that money on union busting consultants. Just let that sink in for a minute. Can you imagine having your job be a union busting consultant? I mean, every day you go to work and see how you could take food out of a working mom's kid's mouth. It's basically an accessory to murder. Hello. Of course, in many countries, union busting does actually include murder. So we got that. This is actually a real headstone. I think this was a U.S. person, but this is a real headstone. Frank Little, slain by capitalist interests for organizing and inspiring his fellow men. And I must say, when I tried to find an image to illustrate what we're talking about here, there were a lot all across South America, Central America. Union leaders usually don't end, it doesn't end well for them. Anyway, back to Amazon. Can you imagine working in this warehouse, in a tin roof warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, in 105-degree heat, 99% humidity? We talked about it on our show. We had one of the workers on our show. I think it was back in the summer. No AC. What do you do on your break? Go sit in your car with the windows rolled up to cool down? Oh, no, wait. They don't have brakes. They don't have brakes, so they don't do that. Anyway, in Bessemer, Alabama, they are running a rerun election, results of which are still pending, which is great. and better than losing. How and why is this important? How does it affect you? Because the presence of organized labor affects society in truly only positive ways. Places with higher union density across the board have higher wages and less income inequality. That means less fear and anxiety, less suffering from economic desperation. On average, a worker covered by a union contract earns 10.2% more money than his buddy with the same education and job and experience doing the same job in the same town in a non-unionized workplace. Hello. The wage advantage is known as the union wage premium. And of course, this wage increase spills over to all workers in the area. It's not just the union folks. Unions effectively set broader standards, including higher wages, which the non-union employers nearby have to meet. Otherwise, everybody's going to go work at the other place. Everyone sell their cheap plastic crap instead of your cheap plastic crap or whatever it is that you're selling. I don't know. The combination of higher wages for union members and the spillover effect means organized labor is crucial to raising wages for working people and reducing income inequality. Also, studies show that union membership reduces white racial resentment. That's right. So no more scary Proud Boys, etc. And instead of burning torches, those guys can stay home and play peekaboo with little Adolf. Studies show that men who spend time with their babies have decreased levels of testosterone, by the way, which translates basically into decreased levels of doing stupid, aggressive shit like joining the Klan. Yes, union membership helps folks see that the propaganda they've been slammed by since the start of the Republic is actually serving to oppress them. If only being woke meant being woke to this little fact and not just a lot of lefty additional sometimes unhelpful propaganda. Anyway, instead of thinking that the brown folk are taking their jobs, these white folks, they're starting to see that their plight is actually a shared one against corporate tyranny and out against the fellow worker of whatever color. It is no wonder that our corporate friendly fascism, the fascists and the conservative politicians want to keep them down. Solidarity is a dangerous concept to hierarchical, abusive structures of power, is it not? The ones who feed off the blood and sweat of others. The research also found that the long-term political and economic effects of weakening unions, like through the right to work laws and such that we've been covering here on our show, include things like lower voter turnout and basically less democracy, more corporate tyranny. There become fewer working class candidates serving in the legislatures and in Congress, the state legislatures, etc., because this is the pipeline for working class people to then run for office. That's what it is. Labor unions. Without these folks in the state legislature and in Congress, there's more conservative, corporate-loving state policy, which we all know leads basically to death via either environmental degradation, crime, illnesses like drug addiction, and more bad stuff. Unions help reduce the gender wage gap too, and basically improve all around economic well-being of working people. It gives us the means to support ourselves, and it doesn't leave us to die in poverty or rely on the state, which you would think conservative voters would like, not relying on the state. They hate people relying on the state. Although there are, the workers are going across party lines. That we're going to talk to Marianne Williamson about that a little bit later. People joining labor unions actually are across party affiliation. It's very interesting. Anyway, back to the Amazon workers. These organizers, these union folks are basically bringing up the entire plight of humanity, one warehouse at a time. So I want to thank you for doing that. Wish you good luck. And now let's take a listen to reporter Bob Henley, who you know from this show, you know from his work on WBAI and over at the Chief Leader, where he'd been writing forever. Now he's on Salon. He did a super empowering interview with Sarah Nelson of the Flight Attendants Union after that high energy Amazon labor union rally in Staten Island. Let's take a listen to that.
Chance to catch up with Sarah Nelson from the CWA Flight Attendants. So why'd you come here today?
How could I not be here today? I mean, this is what I've been waiting for 25 years, for workers to wake up to the power that we have when we come together. And, you know, a lot of people thought this couldn't happen, but all it really takes is, is that consciousness. And I think that, you know, people have had enough. And it's not surprising that it's being led by the next generation, because no one has laid down a path for them that works. They're talking about the same battles that we were talking about 100 years ago, because we haven't been willing to fight. We have, you know, our density has decreased, so we don't have the power that we had before. But we can claim it again, and that's what they're doing here. And I want to cheer that on. This is what I've been hoping for and wanting for all workers for a very long time, because just representing flight attendants, I can't take on the issues that they care about, that really matter to them, without the rest of labor being organized too.
So how did the COVID pandemic prevent, it seems that 20 million people have walked away from their job. Bigger, that's 8 million more than AFL-CIO. So something's going on. The social contract of work has changed. Is this opening, this once in a century opening labor has to make its case to workers?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the workers are making the case to labor. What did you hear here today? Come on. I mean, the people want a union, and they've been sitting around waiting for labor to wake up to that, and they're done sitting around. They're taking charge, they're making their unions, and we're building a new labor movement.
So you see it as kind of like they're against the status, they're shaking labor movement up, they're challenging the status quo.
I think that they are claiming their own power. I don't think this has to do with, you know, look, what this is really doing is it's going back to labor's roots and what labor really is. Labor is the working people. It's the people on a job site who have the same experience and want to take on the boss together because they're not being treated fairly. And when they do that here, workers in other job sites see that, and they see that they can do it too. Because as Mother Jones said more than 100 years ago, the capitalists say there is no need of labor organizing except that they themselves are constantly organizing and show their real beliefs. And they have been. And they have been organizing around how to squeeze more and more out of the workers. It doesn't matter what industry it is. And so it's time that we wake up and support each other and take our money back. Thank you.
That's from our friend Bob Henley from Salon. We're happy to have him back on the show pretty soon, one of these days. That was our action rundown. You're watching Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. Stay tuned. There's more. All right. In addition to the actions that Amazon workers are taking, 20,000 teachers in Puerto Rico are on strike right now as we speak, as reported by, well, almost no one. Have you heard that before? I mean, I heard it on Lee Camp's new TikTok account, because if you want labor news, you really have to dig for it. The teachers in Puerto Rico have second and third jobs to just try to stay solvent, which is absolutely insane. I don't know why anyone's not doing anything about this. Perhaps our president can go down there and throw them a roll of paper towels like Trump did after they got hit by that hurricane. Also, the fine folks over at Democracy Now! Are forming a labor union. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, you would think that would be an easy sell. And as far as I know, there's not a lot of comments going around about it, but the administration there, whatever you want to call it, are like, yeah, let's do this. That's cool. There was no pushback at all, which you would expect. And it shows the absolute integrity of that left-leaning platform. I know a lot of left-leaning platforms that actually are anti-union. The person who is fairly wealthy, who bought the Chief Leader, which is the largest labor paper in the country, doesn't want the people who work there to unionize. I mean, WTF. More on that later. But right now, the workers of Delta Airlines, in addition, are working on joining the flight attendants union. But the fine political reporters over at The Hill reported on this by announcing the following corporate-friendly headline. Delta is to become the first U.S. carrier to pay flight attendants during boarding. Doesn't that make Delta seem great? I think their reporting needs a little bit of a correction, and I'm going to give one to you. All right, here is the story that I am reporting. And this is from The Hill. Delta to become the first U.S. carrier to pay flight attendants during boarding. Good Lord, could they have made it a more corporate-friendly headline, even if it's true? Let's go through this section by section. Delta Airlines announced Tuesday it will become the first U.S. airline to pay flight attendants for boarding duties starting this summer. Well, God bless Delta. Aren't they just wonderful and generous? Clearly, they see the plight of the worker. Wait, what? Airline flight attendants are not currently being paid boarding duties, meaning they only get, okay. They only get paid, as you'll see as I keep reading this, after the airplane door closes. Here it says this right here in a memo saying, get out of there, other Hill thing. In a memo sent to employees, the company said starting June 2nd, flight attendants would get boarding pay for all flights. In the airline industry, flight attendants only receive compensation for flights after the airplane door closes. Excuse me, I am already ashamed that I often have to walk past the economic privilege section to get to my seat. And now I gotta... This explains why I hear the hurry the fuck up vibe from the from the flight crew, who I didn't even know were not getting paid for any time before the airplane door closes. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. Of course, they're trying to Delta's trying to stave off a unionization effort here, obviously. But that luggage that Etan picked up for you and put up at the top, he's not getting paid for that. I mean, should I be tipping my flight attendant now? Sliding him a 5 spot? I feel bad. I mean, WTF, I already had to pay an extra $80 for that luggage that he had to put up there. Can't we just pay him for being there? It's absolutely insane. Flight attendants, I think they risk their lives flying in a tin can so that we can finally see Graceland, and the company doesn't even pay them for work that they're obviously doing. Okay, back to this reporting. Oh, but it makes Delta seem so wonderful. In addition, along with the boarding pay, Delta's increasing its boarding time for smaller aircrafts from 35 to 40 minutes. So you can get that way too big luggage on there. It's crazy. Flight attendants are critical to ensuring a welcoming, safe environment on board. That's a quote from Delta. We are excited to bring this new benefit to our people and improve on-time departures and arrivals. Look at how many paragraphs I've already read to you on this Hill report. This is why we need a correction. At the very bottom, if you keep scrolling down, which, gotta be honest, most people just read the titles and move on. After even the ad for their other stories, they mention labor. The Association of Flight Attendants, Sarah Nelson, who we just heard speaking from, she's the head of that. They credit their own efforts for the boarding pay, saying the new policy is a direct result of our organizing. Hello. And and a desperate attempt to prevent their other new boarding policy from creating the kind of anger that it deserves. Another, the 40-minute policy, and the people are unpaid for those 40 minutes of obvious work. Have you ever gotten on a flight and there's no flight attendants on it? No, never. The move also comes amid efforts to unionize Delta's flight attendants. So basically, they're trying to pay them off. They're doing what all of these, corporations and rich guys who own corporations are doing, saying, trust me. Okay, you want a little bit? We'll do a little bit. We'll pay you for the work you're doing. Anyway, instead of making a union. It's also a reminder, says the union people, that management holds all the cards. They announced this today, and they can choose to cancel this policy at any time unless we have a contract that locks it in. That's it. And then I love how it says here, the Hill has removed its comments section lest somebody make a... No, as there are many other forums for readers to comment, like this show. You are watching act.tv. Stick with us. Coming up next is my interview with Marianne Williamson, all that and more. Don't forget to follow us across platforms at act.tv. And me personally, I'm on TikTok now as of this morning it's called Julianna Forlano at Home. It's non-professional TikToking, if you're interested in seeing my cat videos. All right, stay tuned. We've got more coming up. A Starbucks location in St. Paul, Minnesota has become the first among the retail giant outlets to unionize in the state. Isn't that exciting? Starbucks. I got a little image of the Starbucks pins to put up for you. Where are they here, Giancarlo? We got these beautiful. There they are. Look at that. They got pins. They got merch. Anyway, this is exciting. It happened after a 14-1 vote. This is breaking news as of today. 20 Starbucks stores across the country are now unionized. Around 220 Starbucks stores have sought elections, with more added every day. And just like we talked about with the Delta people, since his return to Starbucks last week as the interim CEO, Howard Schultz is basically saying, trust me, not a union to make things right for you, even though I haven't done it yet. Marianne Williamson, writer, activist, former presidential candidate, was at an event in solidarity with the Starbucks workers and was able to speak with one of the workers there. We'll be speaking with Marianne in just a moment. But first, let's watch her exchange with this amazing pro-union Starbucks employee.
Companies can make promises all they want. Our Starbucks can say that they're going to give us a raise or better benefits, but as we've seen in the past, it isn't a legal contract without a union contract. And by us organizing and bargaining and forming a contract, we can guarantee that we will, first of all, keep the benefits that we currently have, which has been a problem in the past with Starbucks changing benefits without telling us. And secondly, argue for better benefits than what we already have.
And what are the benefits that you would like to see improved?
I would like to see a wage increase for starting pay, but then I would also like to see an annual cost of living increase, because inflation is off the roof right now, and I make $12 an hour right now. It's just not enough in Virginia to live on.
And then what about seniority pay? I hear that there's a conversation. What about your health care benefits?
Personally, I don't use the health care for Starbucks, but I have coworkers who do, and I would like to see lower premiums.
So you would rather stay at Starbucks and be part of the unionization effort than go somewhere else?
I would, because for me, it's the resurgence of the labor movement that is so important, and I can make a better use of my time by organizing and creating Starbucks Workers United than by making a few dollars more somewhere else.
When you came into this job, did you have much of a consciousness about the importance of the labor movement already?
I did. Yeah, I've always been a very political person, and when I was in the hiring process, I Googled, does Starbucks have a union? And the answer was no. And I thought, okay, I guess they don't. But when Buffalo started organizing in August, it popped up in my head like, hey, this might be something I can go with.
Are you feeling encouraged? I mean, obviously you feel encouraged about the votes that have happened already in Virginia this week. Are you feeling encouraged about the larger labor movement, not only in relation to Starbucks, but across the landscape of?
Absolutely. I think this generation that we have right now, we lived, I'm 17, so I was a child through the recession. Like, my generation has seen the broken promises of both the government and companies. And you can see it happening in Amazon, in Starbucks. They're trying really hard over at Apple and Chipotle. So I really hope that Starbucks Workers United can incentivize the rest of food service industries to organize.
You've been very articulate. You obviously know what you're talking about, and you are standing for your principles. Is there anything you want to say to the audience that you want people to know that you think people might not know, and ways that people could help you?
I want to say to anybody who's not a union worker, it turned out to be easier to form a union than I thought it would be. Reach out. We are a community. I've had help from all sorts of unions out there. So even if you work somewhere that doesn't have a union, reach out to your local labor board or your local union chapter and talk to them, and they will help you, because there is power in a union, and the more unions we have, the more there will be.
And just my own personal word, if this is America's future, we're going to be just fine. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Beautiful, right? Well, my interview today was with the very same Marianne Williamson, former presidential candidate, activist, writer, and leader for many spiritual folks here in the United States, and even many political folks here in the United States. She's coming up right now. Here she comes after our little interview bumper that I love. Marianne, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. So it was great to see you speaking with the Starbucks employee. What was your experience talking to the young Starbucks workers about their movement?
Well, being at the Unity Fest, being around all of the young people and older people who were celebrating the wins, 7 stores, 7 Starbucks had agreed to unionize. It was wonderful. The kids, I call them, they're not, I mean, some of them are kids, some of them aren't really kids, but the entire sort of youth orientation of this reinvigoration of the labor movement is very inspiring. The thing that was most impactful for me in talking to the workers was how many of them talked about how they loved Starbucks. And I read from one of the letters from a New York organizer to Howard Schultz, and he said, this call is coming from inside the house. We're not outside agitators, as they used to be called. These are people who kept reiterating that they love working at Starbucks. They just want Starbucks to be better, that Starbucks used to be better. I thought that was very moving.
Is it Starbucks is putting their own union together, or are they they're not trying to join another, like the retail union or the...
Not that I know of. Okay. Not that I know of.
They're doing an Amazon thing where they're putting together their own particular...
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
It is exciting because they are, you know, I think a lot of the millennials were at the effect of the propaganda initiated in the 1980s that somehow unions were bad for workers, it would disincentivize, or you'd actually get less. That, you know, obviously purposeful effort to squash unions still was having an effect even on a lot of millennials. But Gen Z doesn't seem to be buying it at all. They're just sort of past that. They know, you know, it's like, we know when we're being screwed and nothing you can say can make us change. And of course, a lot, whether it has to do with Starbucks or has to do with Amazon, and I think other places as well, a lot of this impulse is coming from how workers were treated during COVID, where Absolutely. It was so clear that corporate pretty much didn't care if you lived or died, as displayed by, you know, their health measures and lack thereof.
It does seem that the economy in the United States has changed so much over the past, say, maybe 3 decades, where jobs like Starbucks and some of the retail work that are the retail folks who are trying to get together, those were not considered. Working at Starbucks was considered like what a teenager does, but now
exactly
these are real, actual jobs, and it seems that the corporations haven't kept step with the fact that our economy has changed.
That's exactly the point, isn't it? A lot of jobs that when I was growing up were things, as you said, teenagers did during the summer are, for many people, their lifeblood, their career, and they have no reason to think that it would be different. You're absolutely right. And that is a fundamental shift in the U.S. economy, and should be for these huge corporations a shift in how they perceive their workers.
Oh, well, I hope they keep adjusting their perceptions, instead of like Amazon, when we reported earlier, spent, I think it was 4.3 or 40, some amount of billions of dollars just trying to crush the Alabama union effort that happened last summer.
Well, that's the point. They are not adjusting their perceptions. Instead, they're spending millions of dollars on anti-union activity, union busting activity. And of course, the big story this week has to do with the fact that even though the Biden administration had said that they would not be giving federal contracts to companies that had been involved in union busting, they gave a $10 billion contract to Amazon, which now Bernie Sanders is trying to get dismantled. So, you know, when you see that Amazon spent over $4 million to defeat Kristen Smalls, and Kristen Smalls raised $120,000 on a GoFundMe page, it really makes you ask yourself, well, what was Christian Smalls doing right? And what Christian Smalls was doing right, that's so, I think, historic, is he was building deep community among the workers. He set up a folding table. He was outside the bus, near the bus stop. Workers got off that bus stop. They got on that bus stop, morning shifts, night shifts. To hear Smalls tell it, this is huge. It's a kind of activism. He said it was built on love and caring. He said it was a spiritual experience. They got to know each other. They helped each other. They built community. They sang songs together. They prayed together. They smoked marijuana together. This is a force of real human connectivity and human awakening and community building that no amount of money, no amount of technology, no amount of business can ultimately defeat, because it's real. It's coming up from the bottom of things. And that's what's exciting about the reinvigoration of the labor movement. This can't be artificially created. This is organic. This is real. And then when you see the successes at places like Amazon, when you see successes at places like Starbucks, it's clearly having this encouraging effect, this inspiring effect on people trying to unionize all over the country in all kinds of industries. And of course, social media helps with that. I think one of the other things, Julianna, that was very impactful to me, you showed that clip of my interviewing Meridian. Meridian is 17 years old. I couldn't even believe the level of sophistication and intelligent understanding of the deeper issues of labor and of unionizing that was being exhibited by these young people. I think it's an exciting moment at a time when we need exciting moments. There's so much to despair about, and it's also so important to note when new little green sprigs are coming up from the ground.
Sure. This is an area where people can see a unity across even party lines. The unions used to be demonized, and the Democrats, who were supposed to be the party of unions before, we all kind of know the history here, before they sold out to the same corporate forces that the Republicans are sold out to. Not that they were 100% great before that, but in this moment when there's so much division, unions and organized labor are places where people who might have different social values come together for the economic good of the people. To me, this seems like a really big deal. And especially what happened in West Virginia, the teachers union, who a few years ago, West Virginia is a red state, and they came out to do what used to be considered, or at least propagandized, as a blue activity, organized labor. So the fact that can you comment on the fact that this actually crosses what's being shoved down our throat as party lines?
Well, what's being shoved down our throat is the idea that the real dichotomy is left versus right. That's sort of a cover for what's really happening. The real polarity in this country is not left versus right. The real polarity is the system versus the people. And the system uses and stokes this left versus right thing so that we're looking there while they're snatching our purse over in another direction. That's what I think people are waking up to. That whether you're on the left or the right on social issues, you're being screwed economically by the same forces. And that neither party is standing up for you quite the way they should. That's why labor is so important, because labor is a different estate. It's saying we're not waiting for the government to help us here. Now, one thing we do realize is that if you have a Democratic Secretary of Labor, it's going to be better for you than if you have a Republican Secretary of Labor. It's not like there are no differences, but still neither one of them are breaking free of the neoliberal agenda. And that's why labor is so important to be a factor that pushes back unequivocally against overreach by corporate forces and in support of the workers, whether they're on the left or the right.
Can you talk a little bit about the work that you did with the working folks of Michigan when you were there?
Well, I was the minister at a non-denominational spiritual center, a church there in Warren, Michigan. And of course, we had 3,500 people coming every Sunday. And a large, probably a majority of those people were at least indirectly, if not directly, working for the auto industry. And that's what Detroit is. Detroit's an auto industry town. So I saw a lot. And one of the things that I saw that really impacted me, Julianna, was If the head of the big three, if any heads of the big three had come in and said, we are going to turn Detroit, Michigan into the world capital for the development of green energy, because what we have here in terms of skill, in terms of engineering, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of research, could make a lateral move. And instead of just promoting an industry that produces carbon, that pollutes the environment, we are going to change the purpose of this industry and the entire intentionality of our economic model to the development of green energy. I can tell you that the workers in Detroit would have been over the moon excited and energized and inspired. So that taught me a lot. That taught me a lot about where the working people of the United States are. People don't want, and I can't speak for every working person in the United States, of course, but I've seen it in industry after industry that not only do workers want to wake up in the morning and do something that contributes, that they can feel good about at the end of the day, that they're not just economic cogs in the wheel, that they're not just doing it for the money, they're doing it because they're producing something with their own skill and their own purposefulness. I think people are really rethinking what work means. People are rethinking what capitalism means. People are rethinking what business should be. Can business be a win-win? Can business be something not just on an economic level, but on every level that actually brings out the best in people to do something good with their time on this earth? I saw that up close and personal, that's what people want. So I think that this entire reemergence of conversation and energy around labor is part of a larger conversation about what it means to not just to be a worker, but to be a citizen, and to spend our time and our days doing something that does more than make a living, make our lives worthwhile.
And dehumanize us along the way. It's
exactly,
nice.
Exactly. We want work to be exactly. And when you think about that, you go, well, I don't want my job to dehumanize me. We have to think, well, what would a real human economy be? And
Absolutely.
that means that people receive definitely more health benefits, more seniority pay, more health benefits, all of that.
It still also seems like even that is kind of not enough. I mean, if we had democratic establishments, democratic workplaces, worker co-ops like they have in many European countries, where the workers actually own and profit directly from their own work. They have a stake in the decision making. It's not like some rich guy owns it and then they're nice enough to give you health insurance or whatever, it certainly seems like having some of that in the United States, even 10% of workplaces, that would cause a competition, and people would want to all work there because the benefits would be better, the way of life would be better. And then these other corporations, the more, capitalistic structured organizations, would have to keep up with what's being offered at these other organizations. Do you think there's any place that the government might be able to encourage some form of worker-owned co-op in the workplace?
Well, I think that you can begin with the bully pulpit. You can begin with the president talking about it. You can begin with the Secretary of Labor talking about it. You can talk about the National Labor Relations Board. If that becomes the conversation that they're having, rather than this obeisance to the corporatist agenda as it is, that opens up the space. What you're talking about is so important. Americans have been trained to expect so little. And on issue after issue, whether it has to do with healthcare, whether it has to do with free education, whether it has to do with environmental protection, whether it has to do with the co-ops that you're talking about, the fact that the workers have so much more say in corporate functioning, Americans are realizing, why do we get so much less than Europeans get? How is it that other advanced democracies are able to function, not only function, but function better? And not only function better for their workers, but actually their economies are actually thriving in places where ours aren't. And so people are seeing through all this, that would be socialism propaganda. You know, you meet these young people and they say, what am I supposed to be so afraid of with socialism? The free healthcare or the free education? Like a lot of them are saying, what has global capitalism ever done for me? And they will continue to ask those questions. And if capitalism and the corporate structure's only response to that is more union busting activity, then we're going to have a hard time in this country.
We lifted you out of poverty. Now we're going to pummel you back down into it.
Yeah, and just be happy. And be happy. Be happy. Be grateful for what we're giving you.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Marianne. I'm so grateful that we were able to take this conversation sort of even out of the bounds that are normally allowed to be discussed. We have a Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. He used to be the mayor of Boston, if you're not, you know, if the viewers are not familiar. And he was a labor leader for decades. And he, you know, it's better to have that guy in as the Secretary of Labor than someone who is anti-labor. That obviously goes without saying, but, you know, he was the head of, I think, the Federation of Building Trade Unions, and he wanted to increase spending on infrastructure to upgrade the roads and bridges and make more jobs. But those jobs are still jobs. I mean, people need jobs, obviously, but they're still sort of within the structure of what we know, which is kind of a modern day feudalism. There's a lord, he owns things, maybe not so much with the federal jobs, but it is great to have that conversation where maybe we can even advance outside of just having organized labor be a ballast or a counterweight against corporate tyranny.
This is so, absolutely. It's the difference between the alleviation of distress and fundamental economic reform. We need a fundamental rethinking. We need a fundamental redesign. And like you said, in many of these areas, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look at what some of our European neighbors are doing. Even when you talk about Marty Walsh, we know that Senator Sanders had pitched himself as Secretary of Labor. Right now, Sanders is out there with Kristen Smalls. He's out there at Unity Fest. He's out there with the Starbucks workers. He's out there with the Amazon workers. Where's Marty Walsh? For that matter, where's Joe Biden, Mr. Union guy, right? So but it can start with bully pulpit. It starts with changing the conversation. Right now, we are having to tinker with circumstances. But what we need to do, which I think what you're talking about now, is we need to re-envision the whole thing, re-envision what a truly fair, a truly democratic economy would look like. And that's more than, like you said, it's more than just labor being a ballast for corporate overreach. It's labor having a seat at the table that it does not have now.
At the beginning of the show, we talked about studies around areas that have higher union memberships, that union membership actually, the studies show that union membership reduces white racial resentment, that it reduces the wage gap between men and women. It reduces, there's just it bolsters democratic participation. It bolsters the amount of working class people who actually run for government. And it certainly seems that a question for you after talking to the young people from Starbucks. Do you notice that the young Starbucks workers recognize that they are in solidarity with, say, some of the older, more traditional looking union men? I know there's a lot of union women now too, so I didn't want to put that out there, but there is this stereotype of union workers. Do you think there's this the young people feel that same sense of solidarity with workers across different?
I don't know, but I hope they do. I know I talked to some of the older people who were at the Unity Fest in Richmond, and I would say things to them like, well, we're the keepers of the story. This feels, I remember saying to some older gentlemen, this is like the 60s, isn't it? They said, yeah, it really is. And also when you use that word solidarity, these kids really mean it. I mean, the word, this isn't just like sloganeering. Part of what this is about is the American worker has been forced into this experience of isolation. Like it's just me and my suffering, which is part of the problem in our country, period, the sense of isolation. Being part of a union, the way things are unfolding today and the energy I saw in Richmond, and obviously what's happening at Amazon, these people feel what not just collective bargaining, but collective everything can be when you're really working with other people with common needs and common goals. And also, I want to add to what you said. I was reading an article about how in hospitals where the nurses were unionized, the healthcare results were better during the pandemic.
Fascinating. It's always great to have you here, Marianne, and I do appreciate you coming on. I do appreciate your thoughts on this area. Any final thoughts about the rising unity that we're seeing across the board in this moment of separation?
I think that America is going through a period of reckoning. We have some very serious problems on our hands. I think everybody knows that. We are under direct threat. Our democracy itself is under direct threat. We have relationship with a country that's actually uttering the word nuclear bombs in our arsenal. We have an environment that is obviously close to imploding. So I think people have been in a real understandable sense of funk and despair. I think, however, that it's time for all of us to be thinking in terms of snapping out of it. Not snapping out of it as in denying these problems, not snapping out of it as in minimizing these problems, but knowing that at a certain point you cry, you process, you reflect deeply on these things. And then there's a time when you say, okay, now it's time to get into the solution. And I think that's what this new reinvigoration of the labor movement is displaying, not just around labor, but really in terms of the state of our humanity and the state of our citizenship, that it's time to rise up and re-envision and re-articulate, reimagine and repair this country.
Well, I don't think we could be doing that without your voice. So I do appreciate you coming on here.
Right back at you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind. Don't forget to follow Marianne. She has a Substack Transform with Marianne Williamson that I highly recommend. Also, Marianne does a number of interviews on YouTube on her YouTube channel. Marianne, what's coming up next on your YouTube channel?
Well, I am going to be interviewing Christian Smalls on Friday. The other day, I did a wonderful interview with Peter Kalmus, climate scientist, who also talks about mindfulness and meditation, and he works at NASA. He's a wonderful embodiment of this sort of integrative, holistic activism. And you can find that at mariannewilliamson.substack.com.
Thanks so much. You're watching actTV. We'll be right back. Good stuff. Yes. Let me take a look at your comments real fast. I've got Raiders fan 1, labor unions and worker cooperatives should take over the economy. Woot! I agree. Raiders fan also says they are right-wing conservatives, not left-leaning if they are anti-union. Also from Violin, convert one corporation into a workers' co-op and watch the avalanche effect. Agree. And then another person says that New Era Windows is a fine example. I don't know about them, so we'll check them out. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm Julianna Forlano. I look forward to seeing you right here on this very channel at this very time, or whenever you're watching it, because, of course, on YouTube, you can watch it anytime. Next week, we are live Thursdays at 1 o'clock. I appreciate your comments whenever you leave them. And if you want to see a particular topic covered, put it in the comments on our YouTube page. I always take a look there. I always watch. And I look forward to having these discussions with you as we move further into, hopefully, a positive future. Let's hope. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.